Welcome to the Adapt or Die podcast. This podcast explores ideas related to self-growth, finding meaning, and living a more fulfilled lifestyle. It's your host, with the most, Armel Tala.
And it's your host, on the low, Ben Smith. We're two college students on our own path of lifelong learning with the hope that you will join us in our journey. And now, it's time for the next episode of
The Adapt or Die podcast. Welcome back to another studious episode. Did I use that word right?
I think so.
What does studious mean again?
Like, someone who studies a lot is studious.
Hey, that's why we got Ben here. He's our walking dictionary. But welcome back. This is part 2 of 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. Obviously, a book that I think is amazing.
Both of us.
Really, really good. Yeah. But what are the main ideas for today, Ben?
Well, today there are so many great ideas. You're just going to have to sit back, relax, and maybe not relax, but just sit back and listen to everything because it's too much for me to explain. So
yeah, no, we're going to be going over a lot. I don't even really know where to start, but you guys definitely go grab the book. Make sure you guys please like the video. It helps out a lot. Subscribe, share it to a friend. And please comment below if you guys think we should separate our clips from our main episode, like 2 different channels, or keep them all in one. Let us know. But with enough said, let's start off. This is rule number 3 in his 12 rules for life, and that is make friends with people who want the best for you. So the thing is, ideal friends are difficult, and it's easy for us to be friends with people that are complacent and stagnant, because when we're friends around those people, it makes us look better. It makes our efforts, no matter how half-hearted our efforts may be, it makes us look significantly better. So it's quite difficult for us to stand up to people that are actually, good and healthy, because again, it takes a lot of courage. So despite how much better we think we are than like maybe some friends that are stagnant around us, we're always going to fall short from what is actually ideal. But the point that Jordan Peterson is trying to make at the beginning of his rule is that you don't naturally want friends that are good for you. And that's because it takes strength and courage to stand up near a healthy person.
Now, one very practical thing he talks about in the book is identifying good and bad friends. And so one easy way is by, analyzing when you give a friend, quote unquote, good news, watch their reaction, see how they react. A bad friend or poor friends, they might not visibly show it, but they're going to think, why didn't that good thing happen to me, right? If I tell my good friend, or on the other hand, if I tell my good friend, this amazing thing happened to me, Mel's going to be like, oh my gosh, like, that's so great for you, Ben. Like, I'm so happy for you. There's no jealousy involved, right? Where a bad friend's going to think, why did that happen to me? And why? Why does this happen? It's because when people do good things around you, it points out the inability or insufficiency in yourself. And so poor friends who are not vested in your best interests, they're going to be jealous, and they're not going to like the fact that you are contrasting them and clearly pointing out their incompetency. One other thing is that bad friends, they also encourage you back into bad habits. So if anyone is encouraging you into doing something that you have a hard time with, maybe you struggle with alcohol, smoking, whatever, and they push you back into that by offering you a cigarette or whatever it is, those are bad friends.
So you may be wondering, why do we choose these bad friends then? Like, why do we keep it around? Maybe you've thought of this before, but Jordan Peterson offers 4 reasons. So number 1 is you need someone else to confirm your miserable existence. Now, this seems to hit pretty deep, but if you read the book, you understand he used a lot of biblical references and also kind of contemplates the meaning of life in the book. But a part of that is that, so you make an implicit contract with a friend aimed at nihilism and failure. And nihilism is just can you define that actually, Ben?
Nihilism is the worldview that life is meaningless and has no value.
So you're making this contract with your friend, and what you're essentially saying is that because life is meaningless, you guys would rather live in this moment. So you're going to sacrifice the future for the present. And so you indulge together, and you guys confirm each other's belief that there's nothing to live for, so why not just live in the moment, right? So that's number 1. You need someone to confirm your own miserable existence. And second is you don't have the courage to stand up next to someone that is ideal. Like we mentioned before, this takes a lot of strength, and it's going to make you look bad in contrast, because sure, you might have been the best at, let's say you're the best basketball player in your town, then you finally go out of your town, and then you see people that are so much better than you. It takes courage to step on that same court with them and still have that confidence, right? And number three is you keep a friend out of loyalty. So a good way to think about the friend you have right now is, would you recommend that friend to your father, your mother, your sibling, or someone you love? If you wouldn't recommend that friend to them, despite what their interest may be, just out of their character, you might want to reconsider that friend. And there's a difference between loyalty and stupidity. And oftentimes you got to let go of a bad friend, because that is the best course of action for not just you, but both of you guys. Last but not least, number four is people wish to rescue someone. And I need to really make this point home, but not everyone failing is a victim. I'm going to repeat this. Not everyone failing is a victim.
Preach.
Not everyone at the bottom wishes to rise. And oftentimes when we do want to help someone, this is fueled with vanity and narcissism. Because what you're trying to do is, one, you're trying to make yourself feel better and look better. Like, hey, look at me. I have such great character. I'm a good person. I want to help this person out. Second, you're wanting to draw attention to your virtuous acts, being like, hey, look, I'm helping my friend out. Like, hey, sorry. Like, if Ben was hitting me up and I was like, oh, no, look, sorry, I'm helping my friend that's going through XYZ, when it's like, that XYZ is not your problem. Why are you helping them out? And last but not least, again, it's going to make you look better. It's going to make you look virtuous. So remember that the 4 reasons why we may choose bad friend is: you need someone to confirm your miserable existence. You don't have the courage to stand up to someone that is ideal. You keep a friend out of loyalty even though you shouldn't, and you wish to rescue someone.
Now, one thing that Jordan Peterson is not saying is, he is not saying don't help anyone, give up on all your friends. Okay, there's a very fine line between helping others who are your friends and letting go of people who are bad for you. What he is saying is, stop helping people who don't want to be helped. Okay, the desire to improve can only come from within, and it is a precondition for progress, meaning that you can only help someone who actually wants to be helped. If they do not want to be helped, please let them go, okay? And why? If someone doesn't want to improve themselves, they definitely don't want to see you improve, because you're just starkly pointing out how incompetent and their inability to go through life is, okay? Now, one thing that's important is, it's difficult to distinguish between someone who wants to improve and someone who's merely acting like they want to improve, okay? And so, sorry. Um, and oftentimes, even people who are getting or receiving help, they don't even know if they want to improve, or are just allowing someone, or just taking advantage of someone, right? So here are some practical tips for differentiating whether someone actually wants to improve or is just taking advantage of a willing helper. Okay, the first is, why is someone failing? Why are they in trouble? Okay, look at that reason. 2, pay close attention to someone's effort and their focus. All right, their actions speak much louder than their words. 3, keep track of how often they're failing and why they're failing. This is very important, giving clues of their actual intentions. 4, make sure you give them space and autonomy, okay? If you hold someone's hand, even if they're authentic and wanting to be helped, the fact that you're holding their hand might let them fall into a trap of letting you do the work for them, if that makes sense.
I have an objection. Jesus befriended tax collectors, prostitutes. Like, how can I turn my back on my people?
You are not Jesus, okay? There's been many scientific studies on this. If you are around those unwilling to progress and unwilling to move forward in life, they will only bring you down, okay? This has been shown in many studies. I won't cite them because we don't have time, but I'll put them in the notes. So the point is, overall, assume you're making the easiest decision, not the virtuous decision. That goes back to what Mel was saying. 2, standing up to healthy people is very difficult, but ultimately much better for you. And 3, the important thing to reiterate, make friends with people who want the best for you.
Wow. So we hear those rules all the time, but when you put in that perspective and understanding, especially he hit me when he talked about our miserable existence. So I really hope that that impacted you. But on to number 4, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. I need to say that again. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. So comparing yourself to others. A lot of the times when we make comparisons, we compare ourselves to just one specific aspect or one specific trait. So it's like, damn, like, that other person, they're more athletic than me. Oh, that other person, they're more intelligent than me. But we make this as if that's the only thing that matters, right? And this manner of comparison is this manner of comparison was not used back in the day when, at least in small towns, because everyone could be good at something, everyone could be the best in something. But now that we live in an interconnected digital age, someone is always going to be better than you. And I love the fact he says you will know it. Because how many times have you seen a video of someone doing something extraordinary and you're like, wow, like what? So this is true for everyone. Everyone has an internal critic that just says that you aren't good enough. But the thing is, you'll never be good enough. So you shouldn't try to compare yourself to someone else. And but the thing is there something wrong with us? Why do we think this way?
So going back to from an evolutionary standpoint, we are actually hardwired to be dissatisfied. We are hardwired for discontent. Okay, why? The answer is simply due to survival. Okay, think about if you are someone who's hunter gatherer trying to survive. If you are completely satisfied with your current place in the world, all right, you have no precondition for action. So action requires that you think there's something in the future that is better than the present, and that motivates you to take some action, right? If there is not something in the future that would be better than right now, there's no reason to take any action. Okay. And so evolutionarily, we developed to have the idea that there is always something better, because that pushes us to go find food, drink water, go reproduce, right? Do all these things that allow our species to push forward and push forward our genes. And so in that way, we are always hardwired to be dissatisfied. It is part of our intrinsic nature. Okay. That is why there is no goal, no accomplishment, etc., that when attained will leave you feeling fully satisfied.
That is a bit depressing. It's like there's no goal that can actually leave me satisfied. So it raises the question, what does winning mean? When we think about winning, we want to go back to comparisons. And the truth is, your life is truly unique. To compare yourself to someone else is impossible because that comparison simply cannot be true. And you can't make that comparison. But this is less true when you're young. A lot of the times that when we're young, we're growing up all in a very rigid structure. But as you get older, you have more freedom, you have more independence. So this rule becomes ironclad because the older you get, the more experiences and the more choices you get to make on your own. But furthermore, when you compare yourself to someone else, you truly aren't really getting the whole picture, right? And there's a what was the word I you use
Conundrum,
conundrum, but I like to use what was it?
predicament.
There's a predicament here, right? And to quote Jordan Peterson, perhaps happiness is always to be found in the journey uphill and not in the fleeting sense of satisfaction awaiting at the next peak. Simply put, this means that winning is aiming towards progress. True winning is wanting to just improve. And this is only going to come if you compare yourself to who you were yesterday, because comparing yourself to yourself is the only legitimate way to actually compare anything in terms of your progress.
Now, if winning is progress, right? So winning is not attaining a goal, it is the actual journey to a goal. How do we quote unquote win? Okay, so there are some very easy things to do. The first thing that is very simple: pay attention to your emotions. They tell you so much about yourself that you really didn't even know. And so, a few questions that you might practical questions, these are not like general but like good example questions, is why do you feel a sense of dread when pursuing your passion? What, when completed in the moment, excites and motivates you? Why do you feel resentment when addressed a certain way? When you ask these questions, your emotions tell you a lot about, maybe you're not actually as passionate about something as you thought you were, but you were attaching a different goal, possibly money, fame, wealth, to that, and saying you're passionate about it, but you were actually more passionate about the results of it. When someone's treating you a certain way, you don't like that. And you probably need to tell them because you don't like being treated that way, right? So pay close attention to your emotions. They tell you very important things. And there's a difference between how you think the world should be and how it actually is, okay? Now, using this information, there are three very easy questions that will help you move towards action, okay? The first is, what is it that is bothering me? Remember, use your emotions to do that. 2, is that something that I could fix? Okay. 3, would I actually be willing to fix it? Okay, so once you identify something that's bothering you, you keep asking yourself 2 and 3 until you get a yes. And for a reminder, 2 is that actually something that I could fix? And then 3 is, would I actually be willing to fix it? So basically, find the minimal possible action that could make your life better. And that's what you're going to keep doing until you find a yes to both questions 2 and 3. As a quick example, maybe you realize that the major you've chose is not a good major. It doesn't fit you, you don't like it, whatever. So you would identify something bothers you from question one. Now for question two, is this something I can fix? So hopefully that you realize the answer is yes. Maybe you're too far and the answer is no, and you do something else, but we're gonna go with yes for now. And then for doing a three, you're going through a few different actions that would I actually be willing to do these? So you're not willing to submit a transfer application. It's too much commitment for the moment, right? Maybe two, you're not willing to talk to an advisor because you're embarrassed about your position. Three, maybe you don't want to read a book about a new major because that's also too much commitment. But you are willing to take 15 minutes to read a few articles about some interesting majors and other possibilities. So take the minimal action possible. That's better than nothing, okay? If you do this every day, I swear, your life will quickly change. Just find the minimal possible thing that you can do to improve your life. It's very easy.
I want to add that growth is not linear, it actually compounds on itself. So those little actions may seem not significant today, but as they keep adding on top of each other, they become significant when you look at it in the long run. But with all that being said, this approach of asking yourself questions will not work if you are not honest with yourself. Like someone that comes to inspect your house, you want to be critical and you want to make sure you're really being honest about what needs to be improved. And if you hide these from yourself, you will never improve. This process hurts, and it's not something easy to do when it comes to reflection. This is one of the reasons I feel like it's BS when people tell you not to think about your future, not to figure out what you really want to do, because you're making people shy away from this process. It's difficult to admit and confront your inadequacies, and you might feel like, dang, once you do this realization, you might realize I really do need help. I really need to make a lot of improvements in my life. But that's good. And one thing that I really like that is kind of framed that Jordan Peterson frames is progress begins with believing you want to be better and taking an honest inventory of where you are at the moment. That is true progress, because if you can't admit you want to be better, you're not really progressing towards anything. You're just living your life each and every single day. I do want to make clear that Peterson says that you shouldn't never compare yourself. We're just having this whole debate or this whole rant about don't compare yourself to other people. But when it comes to setting goals, you do need a reference. You do need that ideal person in that specific domain, but you're only picking that one specific thing that they're good at or that you want to accomplish that they kind of accomplish to help you create a goal, and using that distant but seemingly impossible goal to extrapolate downwards, and really meaning that you want to use that goal and create smaller goals, kind of like how Ben mentioned previously, is having those small goals to start off with and trying to just do those every day, trying to improve every day compounds on each other. So use the ideal person to inspire your goals, but only compare your progress to yourself, because that's the only truth that matters.
The last really important thing that he talks about is don't blind yourself. And what he means by this is don't become so focused on a concrete goal or desire that it blinds you to what you actually want. And he has this really good quote that I like: a naively formulated goal transmutes with time into the sinister form of the life lie. And so, what that really means is that when you're making goals in the present, you have incomplete information. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. Maybe your passions change, people change, you move, whatever it is. Something changes that changes what it is you actually want. It's okay to pivot. It's okay to say, actually, I don't want this anymore and I want to do something else. That's not quitting, that's really pivoting. Okay, there is a difference. And so if you decide to do something and never let yourself pivot, you're going to be stuck in that, and it's going to be the same as if you're basically going to be imprisoned to that goal, never letting yourself do what it is that you actually realized you wanted to do. Okay. And he has another good quote that I'm going to say: perhaps what you want is blinding you to what else sorry perhaps what you want is blinding you to what else you could be. Perhaps you are holding on to your desires in the present so tightly that you cannot see anything else, even what you truly need. So, in sum, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today.
Wow. Every time you think you understand these rules, but Jordan Peterson kind of flips it on his head, then reflips it to make it make sense. With that being said, we move on to a rule that isn't as applicable to, I hope, some of us here. For my older folks that have kids, you guys should definitely read this chapter. I think it's going to shape the way I raise my kids whenever I come back and read this book. But rule number 5 is don't let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. The critical point of this rule is it doesn't seem like it'll make sense to what the rule is saying, but is overprotection of children and people in general is the worst thing you can do for them in the long term. But this doesn't mean you don't discipline your kids. Children must be taught how to act in the world. Letting them act improper will only result in them being treated cruelly by the world, right? And so a parent, is what do you call, kind of like the middle person, the middle ground between your kid and society, right? If you don't properly train them, properly was discipline them to act in a way that will be socially acceptable to the world, that doesn't mean you make them conform to what everyone else is thinking, but it means that they're well behaved, good people that can actually thrive in society. And a quote I love for this is that Jordan Peterson says is, "You love your kids after all. If their actions make you dislike them, think what an effect they will have on other people who care much less about them than you." Like, no one is obligated to care about your child when they actually go in the real world. So again, if you do not discipline your kid, they will be neglected, and be the outskirts of society. And food for thought here is, this is actually really interesting the way he describes this. Just something to think about. People often get basic psychological questions backwards. Why do people take drugs? Not a mystery. It's why don't they take them all the time? That's the mystery. Why do people suffer from anxiety? That's not a mystery. How is it that can ever be calm? There's a mystery. We're breakable and mortal, and a million things can go wrong in a million ways. We should be terrified out of our skulls at every second, but we're not. Again, that chapter, just wanted to hit on it real quick. Ben doesn't have much to say about that, but take us on to number 6.
Number 6, set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. So we're actually going to take a little bit of a detour or tangent to start this chapter off, and we're going to talk about evil and nihilism. So one critical question he kind of asks is, what motivates mass murderers? And when you think mass murderers, the specific example he had in the book was Karl Panzram. You can look him up, but also Soviet and Nazi death camps. What motivated people to commit such truly evil acts? Okay. And one, he starts off as nihilism. So one explanation is nihilism. So what is nihilism? It is the rejection of all religious and moral principles in the belief that life is meaningless. Okay. And so if you think that life is meaningless and that there is, and also to reiterate something else we've talked about, life is very hard, it's tragic, and life is suffering, right? So when you put those two things together, if life is meaningless and life is also suffering, one logical solution, or the most logical solution, is to end it. This is actually what causes a lot of people to commit suicide. It's a heavy topic, but if you think that life has no value and it's also existential suffering all the time, why wouldn't you, right? Now, some individuals, they suffer extreme psychological, physical, or intellectual distress. And I say extreme, I mean, sexual abuse, physical abuse, tragedy, things that happen in childhood that are just awful, right? If you take that and add it into the mix of you think life is meaningless and it is suffering, and you throw in some purely evil acts, people think that not only is life meaningless and it is suffering, that all of humanity is so evil that it is not only their will, but their duty to eradicate humanity. And that is something that produces mass murderers. That is one explanation. So kind of to reiterate, the point is that combining nihilism and meaningless with suffering, that is life, produces rational thoughts of suicide. Further merge this with extreme distress, this creates mass murderers.
Wow. Let me shed some light and bring some hope in the world. You have a choice. Life is suffering, and there's no doubt about it. But you don't have to choose nihilism. Most people go through, like Ben mentioned, an absurd amount of pain, and they go through a lot of suffering, but they see the error in what other people have done, and they don't succumb to it, and they don't try to perpetuate that evil. Trying to use big words, perpetuate that evil into their next generation, right? They actually end it. So those that are abused are actually least likely, and this is a stat from Jordan Peterson that I'm kind of paraphrasing, is that those that may have been like physically abused, they're least likely to actually do that to their own children. They end that cycle, right? And so there's a character named a character from this author named T.S. Eliot's. Their book is called The Cocktail Party. So this character told their therapist that she hopes that all her suffering is her fault, right? And let's kind of break this down. So why would she hope that her suffering is all her fault? So the thing is, it's either the fault It's either the fault of the world or her own. And if it's the fault of the world, there's nothing that can be done there's nothing that can be done, and life is truly meaningless. But if it's her fault, she can learn, and then she can set her life in order to be something meaningful. So this kind of ties in the actual idea of this chapter, setting your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. Because if you struggle with your life sufferings, have you assumed as much responsibility for your suffering as possible and given all to set your life straight? If you haven't thought about this, you may want to, because again, if you're blaming external factors, then you can't control those external factors. But if you understand that there were some choices that you've made that leads to this suffering, it will allow you to say, okay, how can I correct them? How can I not make those choices again? And an example is, please, Ben, tell us the name of this person that went through some truly, and when I say truly horrible things.
Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
And so Alexander Souls of
Just call him Alex.
my boy Alex, right? So he grew up in the brutal conditions of Soviet Russia, and he was placed in one of their work and death camps, and this is similar to the Nazi death camps. And so he could have blamed Joseph Stalin for his position, but he actually didn't. He meditated on his entire life, and he asked, to quote, "At what points in my life did I choose the path I knew I shouldn't have chosen that resulted in my current situation?" Someone that is in a death camp, that is in what we call the what was the name of the actual camps?
The Gulag.
The gulags. To just think about that, and they're asking, what did I do that brought me to this situation? Then he asked, to quote again, "What can I do right now to set things straight?" And he wrote the Gulag Archipelago.
Yeah, Archipelago.
He wrote the Gulag Archipelago, and I didn't know what this book was, but apparently it was super significant in actually ending like the idea that communism, it ended all justifications for it, because he revealed the true evil that was going on behind it. So think about that. If someone that's going through concentration camps or similar to those can sit there and ask themselves what they could do better to make their life suffering less painful, or what they could do to just help improve the world for the next generation, and they went ahead and wrote a book that stopped some of the greatest suffering in the world, then what's stopping you from asking yourself that question?
It's powerful stuff. So in the end, we have this rule: set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. But what does setting your house in order mean? It means taking ultimate extreme responsibility for your life. Okay, don't blame your parents, your school, society, capitalism, communism, whatever it is, for your problems. Why? Well, it's not necessarily that we don't start, and we don't all start on equal footing, right? We all come out the womb a little bit different. We all have different talents. We all have different positions in life, or born in different places geographically. The point is, though, that your best strategy for improving your life and living a life that is meaningful and kind of sheds the existential suffering that Jordan Peterson talks about that we all feel, is to assume as much responsibility as possible. Because when you do that, you take on everything possible that you can change about your life and improve it, right? The more responsibility you put on the world for your suffering, the less control you have. And even if you don't have that much control, that's still less control than you would have had otherwise, right? So the best strategy is take on as much responsibility as possible and set your house in order. How do you do this? Very easy. Listen to your inner conscious. I shouldn't say easy, very simple. Easy is a bad word. Listen to your inner conscious, okay? Stop doing what you know to be wrong and destructive, and start doing what you know to be beneficial. Don't ask how you know these things to be destructive or beneficial. Just do them. If you ponder them too much, you're just going to confuse yourself and you get caught up in a whole mess. The important thing is that, one, you need to do this by your own standards, okay? Don't follow some arbitrary code or whatever someone else thinks. You know what is right and wrong in your heart. Do those things that are best for you. Again, not what you desire, but what are best for you, okay? The second thing is that don't make these jumps huge, okay? Incremental steps are so important, okay? Do the minimum possible you can today to improve your life, even if that's just 5 or 10 minutes. Get started today, because 10 minutes every day will snowball into more and more time. And one thing he says is, if you stop doing what you know to be destructive and wrong for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, the rest of your life, what would your life be like? What would your life be like if you did things that you know to be beneficial for yourself. Okay. So give it a try, guys. You have, if you haven't already, or I know a lot of us are because we're listening to this podcast, but give it a try. Stop doing what you know to be bad and start doing what you know to be beneficial in incremental and small steps. You literally have nothing else to lose. If it doesn't work, you can always go back to the existential suffering and tragedy that is life. That wraps up our episode for today. Sorry to keep it it was a little heavy on the heavy side, but I think this is some good advice.
Oh, trust me, it only gets heavier.
Yeah, it only gets heavier.
It literally only gets heavier. This is like the best and lightest of his advice. But I think one thing I want to mention before we kind of recap everything we talked about is these rules actually do kind of stack up upon each other. So when he's talking about make friends and people who want the best for you, right? You know, we understand that it's hard for us to stand next to people that are tall. Not tall. It is hard to stand next to Ben because I'm like, damn, I'm short. But it's hard to stand next to people that are, you know, ideal, that are doing really good for themselves, because sometimes it can make us feel little. But you stand around those people, you surround yourself with good people. Then this ties into rule number 4 is those are the type of people that will encourage you to progress each and every single day. Those are the type of people that will tell you not to compare yourself to others, but compare yourself to you, compared to the progress that you made the day before. And skipping over the kids one, obviously. But then that goes into 6, that if you take full responsibility of your life, if you realize that, hey, I might be suffering right now, but if I'm willing to look at it and focus on what I can control, then I tie that back to number 4 of being that I'm just going to compare myself. I'm just going to compare to the progress I made yesterday. Yes, my life was worse yesterday, but can I make it better today? Can I make it better the next day? So I think it's truly beautiful how, without him saying it, these ideas actually stack upon each other, and in the way he puts it in order, to me, like if you understand the rules that come before each rule and you kind of establish those in your life, it makes it a lot easier to accept and act upon the next rule he brings up.
Absolutely. Well said.
Do we even need to do a recap?
I
think I just did it.
I think you recapped it for us.
Amazing. Phenomenal.
Now for my favorite part of the episode, Armelicus Melius.
There was a lot said today. So let me get these quotes right. We have 2. I think I'm always going to do the copy for. To quote Jordan Peterson, a hurricane is an act of God, but failure to prepare when the necessity for preparation is well known, that's sin. That's failure to hit the mark. And the wages of sin is death. Romans 6:23.
And Romans 6:23 is just the wages of sin is death. The rest was Peterson.
Very true. Last quote. Don't reorganize the state until you have ordered your own experience. Have some humility. If you cannot bring peace to your household, how dare you try to rule a city? Wow.
Powerful stuff. The first quote really hit me because it's like things happen in life, but you still have responsibility and you can assume control over a lot more than you even realize. I would say we have a lot of control over things that we give up control for, and that your life could be monstrously better for it if you just assumed 50% of the control that you're giving up.
And these ideas are not new. Like Stoicism, that's been around. That's something we're going to read about, Letters from a Stoic Meditation. We'll probably combine those or just do those separately. But these are lessons that have been true to some of the greatest thinkers in the world, and that continue to be true today. So I hope this episode was really impactful. We have 2 more to go. So if you're reflecting on your life and you're thinking a lot about each, I guess, rule that we brought up, don't worry, because we both definitely did. And with all that being said, though, anything else you want to add, Ben?
I will say, if you're interested more in these ideas, but you don't want to read the book, go watch some of his lectures. His lectures are online, or even just search up 12 Rules for Life, Jordan Peterson. He's got some really great stuff. Hearing him say it is like, it's going to be different from hearing us say it, because he's written about this stuff for 30 years. Like, he's going to say it better than we can. But yeah, also read his book if you can, though. It's a great book. Amazing.
It's an amazing book. You guys, thanks for listening. Make sure you guys check out our socials, Instagram, TikTok, and all that. Go check out the clothing brand, AODfashion.com. With all that being said, it's been an honor. Peace, love, and positivity. Deuces.